Hello and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be coloring in the first page of my new sketchbook. I finally finished this one, finished it, quote unquote. It's done. The pages aren't all like 100% full. I generally, I've gotten into the habit of trying to fill up all the pages, but I was actually really so sick of this sketchbook that I was like, as long as there's something on each of the pages, I'm okay with finishing it. So it's quote unquote done. I'm planning on making this the sketchbook tour for this week after I cover up the drawing set. I don't want you guys to see, but after that, I do plan on showing this to you guys. But for now, we're just gonna go over these thumbnail sketches that I did for this new piece for my next sketchbook. So I wanted to plan out a page, like a first page for you guys, but usually I don't do that. Usually I just treat my first page like whatever. I tend to skip it actually, and then I go back and draw on it later, but not with anything like super significant. But I was like, well, I have a YouTube channel now, so I guess I'll just show you guys the first page of my sketchbook. I'll like do a little something for you guys. And so these are the thumbnail sketches I decided to do. At first, I was gonna do my OC's Duke and Kamal, like standing back to back or side to side or in like this sort of pose. But I was like, I'm not liking it. And it's like, it's just two people, and I feel like it's kind of boring, and I was going to write welcome, but that felt really disingenuous to me. I don't do that sort of thing, and I really am not interested in starting doing that sort of thing. So I was like, well, let's plan a composition that maybe is a little bit more fun. And then I came up with this one, which is like my like nerd friend group, I guess, and they're all like fighting each other. So it's Cricket and Cole, and they're fighting, and then Paxton and Katsu are just at the end, at the bottom, and they're like, stop fighting over top of us. And so I was like, okay, I'll make it bigger. I didn't really do anything with this one, but yeah, I made it a little bit bigger just to get the composition down a little bit better. But this actually didn't really help me too much, but if I'm being honest. But I think that the finished one actually came out pretty okay. I'm going to show you guys. So this is the finished drawing. There's obviously some issues with it, and I'll talk more about the drawing when we get into the speed paint part. But yeah, that's the finished one, and let's go ahead and get started with coloring it.
Alrighty, first and foremost, I'm going to talk about the piece, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about this new sketchbook and the way that it performed. So starting off, this footage is sped up 2 times speed just because this took me an hour to do. Even though I kept it pretty simple, it still took me an hour, so it's 2 times speed. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so for this piece, I kind of wanted them, like I said, to be like kind of like fighting, tussling a little bit in like sort of way. And normally I would not really go for anything this ambitious. Usually I'm pretty timid, but I've been decided to go for things a little bit more lately, and so I was like, we're gonna try a really ambitious composition today. So it's 4 characters, and they're kind of fighting. And you know what? It didn't really come out exactly the way I planned it in my head, but honestly, it came out a lot better than I was expecting it to be. The pose, the drawing, not the coloring. We'll get into the coloring a little bit later, but just the drawing, like the pose in general. Like, I can see that there's obviously some problems, like the top two, their arms are like way off. But after I finished this, I was actually like, you know what? I actually know how to fix that. I should have drawn his like arm like going up a little bit more or whatever. And so I was like, yeah, it didn't turn out the way that I wanted, but I can see where I went wrong, and I can figure out a way to fix it in the future. So even though it's not very good, it actually makes me really proud. I feel like it's another step in the right direction. And so, yeah, I'm not super 100% proud of this drawing, but I actually feel like it didn't. I just feel like it came out good in some ways, and it came out good in more ways than it came out bad, right? So I still think this piece is a net positive. So that's good. Like I said, we're building confidence. We're getting better marginally, and you know what? Our confidence is helping to build that. You know what I mean? So yeah, when it came to the coloring, I really was running out of time. So I'm actually recording this the night before I'm posting it, and that's actually really cutting it super close for me. Usually I finish it the morning before. So like if I'm posting this one on a Wednesday, usually I would finish it on Tuesday morning, but I actually did not have this recorded until Tuesday morning, just because like I said, I was not really motivated on the days that I usually do art. And so I was like, I have to pull something out of my ass for Wednesday, and so this is that. But yeah, so since I was on a bit of a time crunch, I decided I'm going to keep this limited as possible, right? So for their skin tones, I only did 2 colors. Usually I do a minimum of 3, but I was like, if I sit here and I do three colors for their skin tone, I'm gonna be here forever, right? Especially because there's 4 characters. So I was like, we're keeping it simple. We're keeping it fast. We're keeping it loose, okay? It's the first page of my sketchbook, sure, but it's still a doodle sketchbook, okay? I'm not changing just because it's a new sketchbook, all right? Anyway, so yeah, I'm just like, skin color is gonna be 2 colors. most of these characters have black hair. So I was like, I only need 2 colors to do their hair. And then I was like, I'm going to make everybody's eyes black, even though literally most of them have brown eyes, and I think Cricket actually has green eyes. But I was like, everybody's getting black eyes, okay? It's gonna be like those things in cartoons, like in Dragon Ball Z, everybody has black eyes except for some girls, just because stylistically, are all those characters, they all have black eyes? If they were realistic, probably not. But we're keeping it simple. So I was like, everybody's gonna have black eyes. And the only one who I gave like more of a unique skin tone was Katsuo, just because he's mixed race, so he's Japanese and he's black, and so I was like, he has a deeper skin tone, and the others are just white boys, so they all pretty much have the same skin tone. Paxton's skin tone is going to be the lightest, and then it's going to be Cole, and then it's going to be Cricket, who is in the top right, and he's just going to have a tan because he grew up on a farm, and so his skin is still a little bit tanner than the others. So yeah, I was keeping things really simple, really fast. Even their clothes, I only gave them 2 colors. They have a base color and they have a shading color. So there's not really a ton of contrast, but I feel like I picked deep enough shadows so that way we could actually kind of see where the shadows go. So yeah, so like I said, this is actually really pretty simple coloring. I don't really have too much to say about the piece. Like I said, there's some problems with it, but overall, I'm just really proud of myself for trying to do a composition that was a little bit more ambitious. And also, since I was on a bit of a time crunch, it didn't come out exactly how I planned it in my head, and I feel like I could have done better if I wasn't rushing myself. I was like, okay, let's try to get the anatomy as good as we can, and I was like, when I was drawing, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I was like, cut it off, just make them little tiny, whatever, who cares? Obviously, I think we should always try our best, right? But sometimes our best is knowing when to stop. And so I was like, this is when I need to stop. If I want to get this done, I need to stop now. So I stopped. All right, anyway, so that's pretty much all I have to say about the piece. Oh, I forgot to say the colors. Each of these characters have specific color and it's reflected in their clothes. So Katsuo is orange. You see me coloring him in orange right now. I did have a little bit of problem with the orange that I picked for his shadow color. It actually was not deep enough, so I did have to go over it again with this base orange color, but it turned out okay. Everybody else's shirt colors end up turning out all right too. So yeah, anyway, moving on from that, I'm gonna go ahead and get into this sketchbook. This is a brand new sketchbook. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys the brand. So this is a Strathmore art journal. It is mixed media. It has 64 pages. It's a 7 3/4 inch by a 9 3/4 inch size, and it's got 90-pound paper. So I decided to buy the sketchbook a while ago just because I saw a lot of people being like, oh, it's such a great sketchbook. It's a good sketchbook. It's a great sketchbook. And listen, you guys, I'm always up for trying new paper. I like paper and I like markers and I like pens. So if I see somebody using a pen or something and I'm like, or a piece of paper or something else, a sketchbook, whatever, I'm like, that looks interesting. I do a little bit of research typically before I buy it just because I have really bad buyer's regret. So I try my best not to waste money on things that I think that I will not like. And since I'm at a certain age now, I typically know what I like in a sketchbook. I like stuff that'll go well with markers. And obviously, I use pen. I use ink. I use markers, and I use like my little watercolor pens. Like that's all I use. And sometimes I use pencil. I don't use pencil as much as I used to, but when I do base sketches like I did for this drawing, I use pencil, right? So those are the 4 things I use, which you could say is mixed media. It is technically mixed media because those are all different things and they're all going to react to different papers, right? So I was like, it's been a while since I've used a mixed media sketchbook. Technically, my last sketchbook was mixed media, but it's really more for like marker, like ink and stuff. I feel like it was smoother paper, and so this is actually textured paper. I'm gonna be rehashing old things, but you guys know if you've seen any of my videos and I bring up textured paper, if you hear me bring up textured paper, I usually say I don't like textured paper. I like smooth paper. Okay, so saying all of that, this is a mixed media sketchbook. It's got textured paper. I did this whole little piece on it. I tried out pencil. I tried out my ink pens. I tried out marker. The only thing I didn't try out it was watercolor at this point. My little watercolor brush pens, not actual watercolor, but my little watercolor brush pen. So I tried out pretty much everything that I use on it. Do I like this sketchbook? No. And I feel really bad saying this because people have ranted and raved about how much they like this sketchbook. And I feel like every time someone says that they really like something and I give it a try, I always end up hating it, which makes me feel like a jackass. And I'm like, not trying to be contrarian or whatever, but I really don't like it. And I have to remember that I don't have to feel bad about whether or not I like things just because my sister told me this one time. I was like, I wish I liked other things that people liked. And she's like, so you want to be part of the pack? And I'm like, no, it's just like, it's hard to be like, always negative about something that other people like. And she's like, it's fine. You don't hate everything. And so I'm like, suddenly like, it's not that I hate everything, right? It's just I like certain things. And so I like smooth paper. I don't like rough textured paper. One, I don't like the way that it feels on my hands. Two, when I was using this sketchbook, when I was trying to line it with my normal ink pens, I usually move my hands pretty fast. And my pen was just like skipping way more than it usually does. If you guys can see, I don't know, because maybe because of the way that the video is, since you guys are further away, you might not be able to see it, but the lines on this are really, actually really shitty. Like, really bad. Like, they're really shaky. They cut off, they skip really bad. I had to go over it several times, and I'm sitting here now as I'm recording this, going over the lines again with a different ink pen, just because my usual high-tech C's in 0.3, they were like, it's not that they were too thin, because this pen that I'm using currently as I'm working on it again and just in my free time, it's also 0.3. It's just that something about the tip is not as thin. So even though the lines are the same size, it's just the tip is different. And so my high-tech C's are too sharp, and they're like skipping across the textured paper, and they're not filling in all the lines that I like. And you guys know, you see me when I sketch, I'm currently trying to do like this thing where I'm trying to think more about my lines, and so my lines tend to be a bit sharper. I'm not trying to do sketchy little lines anymore. I'm trying to just do definitive lines when I'm lining things, especially just to get more line confidence, and I feel like I really fucked it up. And then I was coloring with my markers, and every marker I tried, I was like, is this marker dry? But my markers weren't dry, because you guys know, like 2 weeks ago, I ended up refilling almost all of my markers. I mean, you guys didn't really see it, but I had like almost every marker pulled out, and I was filling them up all that day. I recorded that how to take care of your alcohol markers video. I did like almost every single marker that I had. I had refilled them up, and I was changing the nibs, and I was getting them ready. And I was like, this paper is soaking up all of the ink from my markers and drying them up, and it feels really dry when I'm coloring. And it's like really not bad, but it's like really disheartening. I'm like, this is not working. And then when I was doing pencil, it was, listen, it's not actually pencil. Obviously, it's not graphite. It's colored pencil. I use a mechanical pencil, and I use the Pilot Color, not Pilot Color, I use Nano Dia colored lead. So it's like colored penciled lead. And so it was erasing okay, but I felt like it really sort of kind of chewed up the paper as I was erasing. I was trying not to erase too much. I try not to erase too much when I do sketches. Like, again, I'm trying to build line confidence, so I try not to erase too much. But I was erasing, and I was like, I feel like the paper is getting like kind of gross. And so I was like, everything I'm using on this paper sucks ass. And I felt really bad, because this sketchbook has 64 pages, and I have to use all of them. Thankfully, it's 64 pages front and back, so it's only like 32 pages. So I can fill it up pretty fast. Hopefully, I can fill it up in like a month, since I'm going to be doing YouTube videos for you guys anyway. And typically, I tend to carry my sketchbook around with me. But honestly, I'm not looking forward to this next month. I'm actually going to try and finish the sketchbook as much as possible. I did buy a bunch of other sketchbooks that have like smoother paper. And so I'm like getting this one out of the way, kind of, which makes me feel really bad, like, because this is my next main sketchbook. I wanted this to be my main sketchbook, and I'm like really looking forward to it, and I know that it's gonna make me not motivated to do art, because I'm really like, I hate using that sketchbook. I don't like it at all, but I have to get over it, okay? Because the art didn't come out bad in this sketchbook, okay? So even though I don't like the way that it feels, obviously, I feel like most of this is just that I don't like the way that it feels. Obviously, my pens are skipping. That's fine. I could just start using ballpoint pen, just because since the ball is bigger, it's rounder, it's smoother, it'll be easier to go across this paper. But I love my high-tech C's. I spent a lot of money on them. But I'm like, I don't want to use ballpoint pen, because the whole point of my high-tech C's is, well, not only are they sharp and I like them, but also they're different colors, and I like to have a colorful sketchbook. I do have some other gel pens that I have that are a little bit bigger. Instead of being 0.3, they're 0.38. So they're a little bit bigger, but also it's just the tip is a little bit better. It's a little bit, not, it's like bigger. So then the high-tech C's are needle points, but these other ones are not needle points. So I'm hoping if I use them in my sketchbook, they won't skip as much, and I'll be able to go back to my sharp lines. Hopefully, we'll see when I try them out. I'm going to try them out either today or tomorrow on my own, and I'll report back to you guys in my next video. Not tomorrow, but probably maybe on not Friday's video, but next week, I'll report back to whether or not they ended up being okay in my sketchbook. I'm just hoping that since they're a little bit, the tips are not needle points, it'll actually work out a little bit better, and I can use my watercolor pens also. But I feel like it's gonna like soak up my watercolor pens, and I do have 2 sets of them, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna use them all up. I just feel like it's gonna use up all my ink. So when you have alcohol marker ink, you try to be, what's it called, discerning when it comes to paper you use. Like, I don't want to use watercolor paper with my alcohol marker ink, because watercolor paper tends to soak up water. That's like the whole point of it, and I don't want to soak up my alcohol ink too fast. Obviously, I pay a lot of money for it, for one, and for two, I want it to sit on the paper for longer so that way I can blend a little bit more. And obviously, this paper is mixed media paper, but I feel like when people make mixed media paper, obviously different papers have different traits and they take different mediums differently, obviously. But I always feel like mixed media paper is not really suited for markers. One, because of the texture. Two, because I feel like, yeah, not because it's thick, but I always feel like it soaks up paper more. In my old Canson XL Media ones, I also felt like those ones really soaked up the paper, which is also partially why I stopped using those, because they kept soaking up my alcohol marker ink. And I switched to smoother paper, which is more suitable for markers. So yeah, I feel like, I don't know, something about mixed media paper, I just feel like it more is suited towards watercolor than anything. Maybe I'm just biased because I don't like mixed media paper, and I also don't like watercolors, so maybe that's like associating them in my brain. But I feel like watercolor is one of the most popular mediums in the world, so it would make sense, even if you're making a mixed media sketchbook, that you would just kind of skew it a little bit more towards a watercolor than anything else. But I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. If someone comes and is like, hey, you don't know what you're talking about, idiot, I'll be like, oh, sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about. Please explain to me what the thought process is behind how they make paper for mixed media sketchbooks as opposed to other types of sketchbooks. But from all the watercolor paper I've tried, it's typically textured, but that's just me. I've only ever really tried Canson watercolor paper. I don't really have too much experience with other watercolor paper because, like I said, I don't like watercolor. I don't buy watercolor sketchbooks anymore. I bought them when I was trying watercolor, and I'm like, no, thank you. I don't like watercolor. Bye. And even my little watercolor brush pens, I don't really use them for finished pieces anyway, so I don't need them to like smooth and blend it out or anything. It's okay if they're a little choppy. So I don't know. I just feel like mixed media paper, the whole point of mixed media paper is it's like, it's not supposed to be great for everything. It's supposed to be okay at everything, right? If you want sketchbooks that are great at something, they're going to be more specific. They're going to be like marker sketchbooks, or they're going to be watercolor sketchbooks, or they're going to be like graphite sketchbooks, or whatever, you know? If you want something that's really good at something, it's typically is going to be like a specific media type of sketchbook. But if you're like, I like to do all sorts of things, and I like to do them at like just a base good level, that's what mixed media sketchbooks are for. And so I should have expected this. I just let myself be deluded into thinking that mixed media sketchbook would be good for me, even though I know from experience I don't like mixed media sketchbooks, which is not to say that mixed media sketchbooks are bad or that people shouldn't use them. People should use whatever they want, one, and two, like I said, mixed media sketchbooks are good or okay at a lot of things. So if you use a lot of different mediums and you're like, I like to use all sorts of things in my sketchbook, mixed media sketchbooks are good for you. I don't like to use a lot of things, and I like to trick myself into thinking that I like to do different things when I really don't. I like to do the same thing over and over again. I know the kind of person that I am, and I always try to delude myself into thinking that I'm like more out there than I really am. I like markers, I like ink, and I like my little watercolor brush pens. I don't like anything else. I don't use pencils. Sometimes I sketch in pencil, but I really don't do finished pieces as much anymore, right? I don't like watercolor. I don't like paints. I don't like oils. I don't like those things. And so I don't know why I would buy a mixed media sketchbook knowing that I am not jack of all trades and I'm not master of one either. I like one thing. I need to stop trying to pretend like I don't just like one thing. And you know what the thing is? In most areas of my life, I really only like one thing. Like, you want to try something new, I will try something new 1 2 times, but honestly I'm pretty much always going to go back to the same thing that I like. Okay, it's good to try new things and it's good to explore things, but I also think it's okay if you only like one thing sometimes. And I am a very specific person. I like what I like. I try new things, but I really don't like what I don't like. If you're like, hey, do you want this, I'll be like, I'll try it. and they'll be like very polite. I'll be like, thank you for giving that to me. I didn't like it, but thank you. I try not to say too much. I try to be polite as much as possible when people try to offer me things, but they can usually tell by my face. I try to change my expression a little bit so people can't tell when I don't like things. But like, you don't like it. I'm like, sorry, I didn't like it, but I tried it. And they're like, that's okay. And just be honest with people, honestly. If you don't like something, it's better to be like, hey, thank you for giving it to me. I really appreciate the offer. I ate it. I'm sorry, it's just not my cup of tea, but I'm super happy that you like it. Anyway, we're getting off track. But anyway, the point is, I like what I like. I know what I like. I need to stop trying to trick myself into thinking that I like other things. I don't like other things. So after I get through the sketchbook, like I said, it's technically 64 pages, but that's front and back. So really, it's only 32 pages. And so maybe we're going to make a month-long challenge where I like do 2 pages a day. So that way I could get rid of this sketchbook. Technically, it's already April 2nd. When I'm recording this, it's gonna be April 3rd when I post this, so you guys show it. But I'm recording this late at night, so I'm probably not gonna draw anything tomorrow. But I think I'm gonna try to fill up the pages as fast as possible because I don't like this sketchbook, and I'm trying to get over it as fast as possible. And I actually really bought some sketchbooks that I am looking forward to trying. There's this one sketchbook that I got that's probably my favorite sketchbook for markers. I haven't really bought it recently. I mean, I did have it recently, but it was my last time I used this sketchbook was actually in. Sorry, I was pulling it out because they're right next to me. It was in July of 2022, so it's been 2 years since I used the sketchbook. But whenever I go, I've used it twice before, and so I'm not really gonna bring it up right now what it's called, even though I do know what it's called. But it's gonna be my next sketchbook after this, and they actually started selling it in a 10 by 10, and I was like, I love 10 by 10. I don't know why I like 10 by 10 sketchbooks. I think they're really conducive to comics, I think maybe, and then I associate them with comics in my brain, and I like to draw comics, so 10 by 10 is like the perfect size for me. But anyway, it's just really smooth marker paper. The only bad thing about it is that it's warm colored paper and not like cool colored paper. It's like a warm yellow, and usually I like a white paper. But listen, the quality of the paper is great, so I don't even really give a shit that it's yellow. Maybe that's gonna bother you guys, but I mean, some people are bothered by the color of paper. Sometimes I can get bothered by the color of paper, and also it can change the color of your markers. But most of all, I really don't really care too much. I would prefer white paper, but if you got really good quality paper, I don't mind the color. I mean, I even used in the past, I've used the gray tone markers and like not gray tone markers, like gray tone sketchbooks. I'm like, whatever. And it could be fun to work in a different color of sketchbook too. So I'm just gonna try to get through this sketchbook as quickly as possible so I can move on to that one because it's in a size that I like and it's with paper that I like that I know that I like because I've tried it before, and it's in a size that I like that I know that I like because I've tried it before. And so it's like it's okay to step outside of your bounds and to try things, right? But I also know what I like and I need to stop trying to trick myself. Anyway, not to say that this is the worst sketchbook ever and that you shouldn't get this sketchbook. I am honestly not going to be the type of person who is going to recommend you guys something because another one of my biggest problems is that I buy sketchbooks online and I need to stop doing that just because I feel like the best way to know if you're going to like the paper is to touch it in person and try it out in person. Unfortunately, I am not allowed to go to the art stores because I end up leaving with like 12 Copic markers and that gets really expensive when you go in the store. It's just like, it's so sad because you're like, oh, I don't want to buy stuff in the store because it's so much more expensive, but then you don't get like the added benefit when you buy it online. It's cheaper, right? But you don't get to touch the paper and even know if you like it, and then you spend money on sketchbooks that you don't even like, right? And then if I touched it in store, I would have been like, I don't like this. But no, anyway. So yeah, not to knock the sketchbook, or if you like it, that's cool. I'm glad that you like it. Please don't be mad at me because I don't like it, and I wouldn't be in a position to recommend whether or not you guys should buy something. I like I said, I don't really like to recommend things to people because people have different preferences. I can tell you what I didn't like about it and how my feelings are, but I feel like you can say I hated this, and this, right? And people will be like, oh, I actually love those things. So I would actually love to go and buy that sort of thing, which is why I'm not really ever against telling people what they should or shouldn't do with their money. I just feel like if you like the things that I said I didn't like, maybe this would be the sketchbook for you. Or if you're like me and you're like, I use markers and I use inks and I use pencil and whatever, and all that sounds like terrible, and you'd be like, I wouldn't buy that sketchbook. And so, even though I tend to look up a lot of reviews for sketchbooks and stuff, I nothing is really gonna be the same as just touching it in person yourself. Other people will probably, I'm not sure if other people have like a sensory type thing as me where I'm like, I don't really like the touch of the feel of the paper. I like it smooth, but even smooth paper can be deceiving. Like I've had some sketchbooks that the paper is too smooth. I'm like, it's so nice to touch, but it wasn't good to draw on and like make cases for. We'll get to that sketchbook eventually. It's like sketchbook 20 something in my sketchbooks series. We'll get there eventually. But yeah, it was like too smooth. It was for markers, but I was like, it's for markers, but it's actually still really shitty for markers. It's just like this all depends. You're not gonna know how like the paper works until you actually start to use it, and so I would never like really recommend a sketchbook to people through the internet. Personally, for me, I just feel like you're not really gonna know what it's like until you buy it yourself. We're coming on to the end of the video, and I just wanted to let you guys know that I have been working on this piece while I've been doing this voiceover. I recorded the footage actually earlier in the day, but I sat and I looked at it for a while. I feel like it looks better in the footage than it does in real life, but the lines were really bothering me, and so I'm going back and I am filling those lines in a little bit better. And so if you see that this the ending of the video, the image drastically changes, that's why, because I went back and added that in just so that way you guys could actually see the way that the piece looks in real life now, just because I really wanted to change those lines. They were really bothering me, and I just went in real quick and added a background color. I feel like it's really hard to see, but that's okay. Anyway, we're here at the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed spending this time with me. Sorry for the rant. I'll go ahead and see you in the next one. Bye bye.